Welcome back to my podcast, which is Masters Decoded. I'm really glad to bring season 3. I know it's been long wait where almost after a year I bring back to you the featured podcast in many of these platforms, whether it's Apple, Spotify, and liked by many of you. I've been overwhelmed since when I launched this podcast. It was an amazing journey personally for me to understand and interact and engage mostly with all the guests who've been on the show. And I want to relive that journey, and hence I bring to you back the season 3 of Masters Decoded podcast. Today's guest is a very near and dear friend whose name is Marc Gallman. Marc has been my client, my colleague, and now a very near and dear friend. I don't want to spill the beans on the entire conversations which we've had throughout this podcast, but we went about discussing about his health, how things have changed for him after he got hit by one of the life-changing scenarios for him from a health perspective, and how his perspective towards life and various aspects around relationships has completely evolved. And I have had a pleasure to have him in my city, which is Mumbai, to be in present for this show, and I'm really thankful to him. And I hope throughout this conversation you will be loving what he has said. You may have tears, or you may just enjoy the conversations we've had. If you really want to interact and engage with him and get inspired, do reach out to him. But without much further ado, let me get on with the show. Thanks, Marc, for showing up to India and agreeing to do this. This is something which I've been thinking about it for a long time, to actually get you on this platform. And I've seen your life closely in the last 2 to 3 years specifically, but I've known you for many years. I feel strongly that today your story is very interesting, which probably my audience and the larger audience in the world should hear about. And I know a lot of things, and probably I'm sure the audience will get to know more about you. Definitely there are a lot of dimensions which I want to cover. Definitely the first dimension is 2020 March, is that correct? March 2021, exactly, not 2020.
April 2021.
April 2021, where something happened, and I still remember that call very well, and that memory is still etched in my mind. But you want to talk about what happened in that month and that day and all of that?
Yeah, so I guess maybe talking about like the 2 previous months. So I was in a new relationship with at the time kind of quasi girlfriend. It was serious, but it was still early days of the relationship with Allie. And so I'm working remotely, everything, like with the job, there was a little bit of travel, meeting with the clients, and then everybody's digital come March. And actually that was like March 2020. So, we've already been a year in this routine of kind of operating from home and everything. So I would say the month of April, things started to kind of, or actually the month of February, I had 2 events about 20 days apart where the whole right side of my body started to go numb. And for a couple of years, I'd had some weird tinglings in my body and things that I just kind of like, whatever, you just blow it off. I had these 2 events where the right side of my body went numb in February, and then I was like, all right, maybe I should really get this looked into. And so because it's COVID still, hospitals are crazy. I'm like, I want to go get an MRI. It's going to cost a lot of money. I don't want to blow it. I'm calling doctors. They're putting me out till July. So it's like, you know what? Forget it. So I'm in this new relationship with Allie. She's like, you really should go get looked after from a doctor. But just given everything that's going on in the environment, it's very frustrating. So you're kind of putting off your medical care. And um, and then I'm getting these headaches, and I'm finding myself really struggling in like the middle of the day. And I didn't realize like I was popping 2 extra strength Tylenol and 2 Advils
Wow.
at a time for a headache. And at the time, like this was just normal behavior, and I'm like, no big deal. And I look back, my doctors, what they recommend for me now, they're like, no, that is, for my current care, it's like, that's not normal what you're doing. And so, yeah, I see it as a red flag. But what happened was on a Friday, I go in for an eye doctor appointment, April 30th. And that day, luckily, I had scheduled that for like 2 weeks prior. And that day, I was looking at my computer screen, and words were just kind of bouncing on the screen a little bit. And it was really straining my eyes. And I'm like, it's a good thing I'm going to the doctor. And I go to the doctor, they do a glaucoma test. And I guess context, I haven't worn glasses or really needed glasses for like 10 plus years. So it was like, I don't need contacts. This is just going to be routine. Give me something. I'm out of here,
Yeah.
Give me glasses for the computer kind of thing. That's what I thought. I do the glaucoma test, and that's where the doctor's like, you need to go into the ER right now. And I'm like, I got plans this weekend. In fact, right after this, we're going to go hang out. We're going to a guest. He's like, no, you got to go. I was like, can I wait till Monday? No, you need to go right now. And so I appreciate the bedside manner and the directness of this doctor. He said 9 times out of 10, it's not going to be anything, but if it's the one, it's going to be really, really big. And essentially he said that I had pressure on the back of my optic nerve.
Yeah.
He didn't know why. So I go into the ER, cancel all the plans, still optimistic at this point because I've had relatively good health. Like I'm not taking pills regularly. So I'm still kind of like cheery in the ER, wait there for a few hours. I go get the MRI. That was a little disturbing because I haven't had those in a while. And then I come back to the room after the MRI, and Allie's there with me. And that's when I knew things were not right. And so when I'm back in the room sitting there, and I don't remember how many, it was like 4 or 5 doctors come in very solemnly looking at you, and they're like, so it's not good. They pull up the screen, and I see this huge disturbance on the MRI. I don't even know what it is at this point, but I could see it. It was so big, and I'm like, I went into a panic. And that's when, not knowing anything medically, I'm like, well, should we do a biopsy first? Like figure out what it is. And they said, we're past the point of biopsy. We have to get this out now. So immediately at that point, I was not discharged. I was locked in the hospital for 9 days with my, partner in this new relationship there by my side. So this was a significant event. And then 10 days later, you're diagnosed with a terminal brain cancer. So that's kind of the setup of how we arrived at this 1.5 years ago, or 2 years ago almost.
Mark, there are a lot of things which I want to double click on, and I'm sorry if I'm apologizing. I'm going to make some of those memories come back to you because I'm sure it's been difficult for you. But one thing which I want to talk about is the Mark I know in March or April 2021 and today is very different. And you've accepted it, what you have. And I see that you're living a life with whatever time you have, and you've accepted the conditions. And that's what I see that every day, every time I meet you. But it's taken you some time. So what did you do to do that? Like overcome that? Like, I don't know. Want to hear that?
Well, I can kind of summarize it I read a lot about other cancer patients, especially, and I guess one qualification is being diagnosed with cancer is not a death sentence. Being diagnosed with terminal cancer is different.
Yep.
So it's like, not to excuse it, but if someone, I was in there with treatment with people that were on their second, third round of prostate cancer, which prostate and breast cancer are found early, you can live 25, 30 years, with modern technology. But when you get diagnosed with this and you go Google it, and they said, don't Google it, and it's like, well, you have about a year. It's a very different thing than like, well, you're going to have to do a bunch of stuff, but you could still live for 25 years. So you start to prioritize really, really fast when you initially hear a year. And it's like, what's important? And kind of jokingly, I'm sitting there in the hospital after surgery, well, don't need to talk to that person anymore, delete. I don't need these emails anymore, delete. But you immediately kind of go into this nesting phase, I guess, of, you know what? I need to get my house in order. I need to start cleaning up my digital life, get rid of things, simplify it. You start thinking about, what is your legacy going to be? Geez, what am I going to be remembered for now? How are my kids going to be provided for? How am I going to provide for myself until that end? Yeah. All these questions. And so that prioritization exercise, in parallel with the treatment cycle. And so the treatment cycle is all about managing the quality of your life and trying to extend it as much as possible. And so the options that most people have on the table, depending on the situation, could be surgery, could be radiotherapy or radiation treatment, could be chemotherapy. And I ended up doing all three of them for about 15 months. For that first few months, though, as you're going through that kind of nesting, clean up your life, the emotions really start to set in on the gravity of someone or this situation has dictated your outcome. And in one of my videos, I talk about, one of the things not to say to people is like, anybody can, anybody can die at any time. We could go get hit by a bus out here. And I'm like, that's not really helpful. The difference would be if I told you tomorrow you're going to go get hit by a bus. Think about that.
Yeah.
And you're not going to live from it. You're going to change what you do right now because of that statement. The idea that you could get hit by a bus, you're not going to change what you do between now and tomorrow. You're going to do the same stuff.
Yeah.
And that's the difference, is when you have that time that's been set, whether it changes or not, you start to prioritize differently. The emotions that start to go into that, and I used to have this kind of better laid out, but I would say it's almost a daily cycle for probably like this first 7 months of anger, fear, confusion, anxiety, happiness, grief, and you cycle through these the entire day. You could be having a memory of, childbirth, be happy, and then you could be wanting to punch a wall because, of what's happening. And so I would say the combination, really, aside from the treatment and care, is managing those emotions, because you can't stop them. I say you have to embrace them and realize that they're going to happen, and you have to have someone that's a sounding board just to listen.
Yeah.
And that's really what starts changing the personality. Dealing with those emotions and dealing with this prioritizing your life and cleaning it up, those two things together, they change you.
And candidly, you are in that situation, but many of us who are running around trying to make our day or our ends meet every day, we don't do that. And I can tell you personally, I have not done a cleaning or a nesting or prioritizing. All of us want to do everything every day. And somewhere that's a interesting perspective. But building on, you mentioned that you have a sounding board to have conversation with you, or let that person hear you, and you met a partner, and you met her before all of this. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Luckily.
Luckily, in many ways, and she held on to you, even though she heard about this situation, and not only held on to you, but she supported you, and y'all got married. Congratulations on that once again.
Thank
you. It's difficult for the opposite person, and I wish Ali could be here and she provides her perspective. But what when you think about all of this, with her being there and supporting it, and it's not the first time you got married, you've been married before as well, and you went through that exercise of divorce, or that process of divorce, which was painful, with your previous wife and your kids. Going through that, coming out of that, getting into a new relationship, and then realizing a life-dominating event. How do you see the partnership, and partnership prior and partnership now, and the definition of partnership for you?
Yeah, and I could tell you that the separation, divorce, COVID, and diagnosis, this is all 3 years.
Yeah.
And maybe throw one more thing in, trying to figure out, the other thing is, when you're diagnosed, if you have questions about what your faith or beliefs are of death and what happens after, nothing will bring it to light more than being told you're going to die soon. So trying to figure that out at the same time. And so you're trying to process or reprocess some of your prior religious beliefs as well. So I would say I'll break it up in a couple of answers. So one, the current relationship, immediately after diagnosis, I was just spiraling into depression. In fact, if you look at the terminal cancers and everything, being realistic, within the first year of a situation like this, males and age, and you take all the factors, suicide is extremely high in the first year. And actually, if you're older, the less future and outcome a person believes they have, the more willing they're going to consider these things. So I immediately started spiraling into depression. I was probably trying to push away Allie in the beginning. I know I gave her multiple outs. I did not, and we just talked about this the other day, actually, again. I said, I did not want to be in a relationship where I was pitied. I'm like, how can I continue to provide value in this relationship, in this new relationship, for whatever time I have left? How can I make it worth it? Yeah. To this person. And so we came to a very kind of logical and simplistic understanding to say, from my point, I said, hey, I'm going to try to give and receive love, and we'll try to create as many memories as we can together. My role will be to help you around the house. She is also in a role at work that was transitioning and changing. And I'm like, how can I support her emotionally, cooking dinners, being there for her? What can I do? So I completely shifted my life to say, focus on a person. How can I make this person's life better? Because they're making my life better. And so stepping back now to the previous relationship, it wasn't really all that much different, because you're still processing those feelings of regret, remorse, all these different things. And while there's still reasons and frustration for why the separation and divorce occurred, I think it brings, the situation brought a huge amount of humility on all fronts, first of all. But when I look back at that relationship, and again, this is part of I said this to someone just the other day, where in my current relationship, I really try to strive to be her champion. And the question I asked myself realistically, did I do the same thing in my previous relationship? And honestly, no. Is that why we're separated and divorced? Part of it, probably, and probably along with many other things. So I won't dive into that, but I would say that it has made me realize both the good things that I have done, I continue to do to support the kids, but it's made me be more real about the past. And people say don't live life with regrets or whatever. I've actually thought about that deeply, and it's like, if you live life without regret, have you really lived?
Yeah. If you've not made mistakes, how have you make?
So if you make mistakes, you're in the situation, you're going to relive those and think about them. And really, I think it's healthy, because then you make peace with it. And you're like, you know what? I did the best I can, or I did the best I could, and I'm doing the best I can.
I don't think so I've shared this with you, but I'll share it here. I actually attended a summit in the month of November, which was, I've always been a big non-believer of meditation and breath work and all of that. And I attended that summit. It was a 3-day summit. You're speaking about regret, and a lot of those things came out unknowingly. And I kind of realized my stance towards people, towards my partner, my wife, towards my children, and it kind of made me regret. But I also went back to them and, corrected things and had those discussions. And, today I am trying to meditate back. I am trying to do my breath work because it has helped me, like you said, change. But, this is where the difference is. I think for people like us, we don't know whether we are going to have an end time. None of us know. But you have a ticking clock on you, right? And you've realized that without going through this process, which I went through, but you have something which is prompting you to go ahead and focus on those things, whether it's a relationship, situations, and take stock of it and kind of make sense out of it and then take corrective actions. But building on what you were just saying, it's not just your wife, but you also have 4 children.
Yeah.
And they're young. They may not understand or the situation you are in. But some of them who are getting older may realize my dad is going through certain things. How have you addressed that, or are you tried to addressing it, or?
Well, in the summer, I think it was like July of 2021, so relatively soon after the diagnosis, when I didn't think I had much time, I did pull him aside and we had a conversation about it. And all their behaviors were kind of weird. It was hiding, running off, laughing. It was, and their ages at the time were 5 to 8. So you just kind of throw it out there and tell them, I'm trying to cover all age ranges. Hey, I'm not going to be around, basically. Let's try to make the most of it. And the pattern that we had set up was seeing them for 1 weekend a month, which already is not a lot. And so there's already this natural disconnect from it of feeling like, what is my role as a father? And so that was challenging.
Does it continue to be a challenge now?
It does. Yeah, it does. So since then, when we do see them, I'm probably going to cry. Did you bring the tissues? We don't need it. Right?
We have tissue.
We don't need it right now. When I tuck them in at night, when we do have them, I'll give them little bitty hints. I don't want to bust out the whole, hey, I'm going to die tomorrow or whatever. I don't want to be very dramatic about it because I know they'll break down. They understand it enough now to react like that. And so I think it's like these little bitty things of, I'm not always going to be here for you, but I will always love you. And I will always do my best, in the things I'm doing to try to take care of you. So even after I'm gone, I have set up things as part of my legacy, to try to be a father even when I'm not here. That's
deep.
I spent a lot of time.
No, my heart is heavy when you're saying that. And yes, your children are still young, and I'm sure they will realize how good of a father you have been to them and will continue to be in wherever you are. And I'm sure they will realize that. I want to switch gears now a little bit. I want to make you laugh here now. I remember your car plate said big data.
Jeez. That's off limits.
No. No, I want to talk about it from a career perspective. Somebody who had so much of passion towards career, built his career around an industry and flipping it off, right? And focusing on life and forgetting about career. Because for all of us, when we are working, career means a lot to us. And then completely deciding, hey, and you're young, you're not that old that you're taking a retirement and saying, I'm retiring early, right? How was that experience, right? Retiring early from career at that age.
Well, initially it was tough, and I could speak to everyone. I don't care how good you are and what you think you have accomplished. Truthfully, at the end of the day, no one cares, and it doesn't matter. So it doesn't matter how many widgets you helped someone sell or sold or whatever. It really just doesn't matter. However, that said, we all have to have lives and be productive and create things and do things, and it's part of natural life's progression. And I think initially it was very difficult just turning it off. It was like, who am I? So much of who I was had been defined around my professional side. In fact, I used to kind of get jealous of people that had hobbies of, whatever it was, snowmobiling, hiking, whatever it was. I mean, I did things, but I would often think, what is my hobby? What defines me outside of work? And I often struggled with that. So losing that part of my identity was certainly difficult. I will say that part of it is finding that identity or elements of that identity in other things that I do. And so even, being the house maker or homemaker now, that in the workplace, you might try to anticipate the next thing your boss needs. Well, I try to anticipate the next thing that my wife needs. So you look at some basic characteristics, but there's also projects around the house. Now, it's like...
Did you get the deck done?
No, that's not done yet. but you try to apply the project management principles, the research principles, the design principles, things that I might have hired someone to do. I might try to take a limited amount of that on to myself because I have some time. So I'm going to think through things and research things a little bit more. So I think I try to find or keep elements of who I was before, but now it's in a different focus. So, which at first I couldn't see the two.
Yeah.
I guess a good example would be like when you get done with college, or some people might have like multiple industries in their resume and they're trying to get a new job that maybe doesn't align with their resume, or maybe they're new in their career, and it's like, well, who am I? What do I do? And that first resume is like, well, I'm the best cookie maker out there. I made 1,000 cookies a minute.
Yeah.
You know, they're like very fundamental things. And that's what I did. You go back to the fundamentals, and it's not about analytics in my career. It's about what was I actually doing, and how do I take those fundamentals and apply them in a different direction?
I recently made a video on my own YouTube channel, and I spoke about passions, to your point. When we are working, we forget our passions, whether these are hobbies, you can call them, whether it's drawing, creating arts, or music, or any hiking, exploring places, and we forget that. And unfortunately for people, it's late when they realize it. And for me, I realize it today that who am I? What's my personal identity? What's my personal brand? What's the legacy will I leave that somebody will remember? Hey, he was good at that. Like you said, will somebody remember you? Big data or number plate? Your friends will remember you, but did it matter at the end of the day? That's a big question mark, right?
Well, I can tell you, in my situation, you find out who your friends are and who, I would say they're not your friends, but who cares and who doesn't care. I did the YouTube video on LinkedIn, and you get your 5 minutes of limited fame.
Yeah.
And that wasn't the intent, but I say that because outside of that little bitty kind of 5 minutes of fame, most of the people that really, truly care, at least for me, is probably a handful.
Yeah.
Or 2 handfuls, but the point is, it's not really that many that are going to cry at the end of the day.
Yeah.
It's like, I miss this and this and this and this about this person.
Yeah.
So, and those are the relationships that I really spend a lot of time now focusing on. I don't spend a lot of time on the
worldly,
the afterthought ones.
a lot of us, when we are alive and we are healthy, we think about our bucket list.
Yeah.
And somewhere you've created your bucket list, and I see you went on a cruise, if I'm not mistaken, or you're planning to go on a cruise.
Yeah, we went on a cruise this year.
You've come to India to not only relive or re-experience things which you did when you were traveling for business, but you couldn't see India like India. I hope that's what you're trying to do now this time.
Well, I'm also trying to
stay away from...
I have India confidence. Yeah. And Allie wouldn't have gone to India without, someone that had India confidence. Like, no, like just getting here, for instance, I'm just walking down the street and everybody's and it's like, whatever, I don't care.
So, when you think about bucket list, is that something which people should thrive for?
Okay.
Or is it too late when they realize that like, shit?
Well, I'll give you 2 perspectives on that. One, yeah, initially there was kind of a lot of things to do. You kind of start creating those. You have some of them before, and then you start wanting to check them off. I'm really not in the mindset right now of checking things off. I'm not. Initially, yeah, it was kind of that. But even...
And why?
Because, I don't know that I have a great answer why right now. I feel like it was more of like a to-do list than a living in a moment. I don't know. But it was like, you know what? If sitting at home or having a conversation with someone is what makes me happy in that moment, that's what I'm going to do. There are some things that I do want to do, but this idea of like, well, I would say I try to fill my life right now as much as possible with things that are more meaningful than things to check off.
Okay.
Because, part of the reason why I'm here in India, yes, I do have the affinity of prior, but again, it is really to share myself, the experiences I've had, the stories, I tell the stories. It's to share that with someone else.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, if it wasn't
better than Ali, actually.
If it wasn't her being here, I wouldn't be here. It was a significant, 100%. It is not because I don't care about the people. The amount of resources and time it takes to make this happen, I would not have done it without her. So she's what creates the meaning in this scenario for me being here. So, and really sharing that life with someone else is why I do a lot of things.
Yeah.
But if it was just me, I would keep things more simple. It's not about checking off a bunch of things.
No, this has been a very interesting conversation, Mark. I really thank you for speaking your heart out today. I have personally either reaffirmed things which have been going on in my mind, and I can tell you a small story. I think I've shared this with you, is where when you had your situation of glaucoma, even I got detected with glaucoma. And I started having the same thoughts as you started, because you were going through that experience. Like, am I going to have the same thing which you have? And it really scared the hell out of me. And actually, I do have glaucoma. I do have pressure in my eyes. I do have certain things more in my left eye where my brain, it's a genetic defect. I've realized that my brain has been pushing liquid in my left eye. Which has stopped now. The doctors have treated it, but I still have it, and I still have to keep going to the doctors every 3 to 6 months. But that entire time when I was going through this, not knowing what's going to happen, because they were asking me to take laser operations in my eyes, nothing compared to what you've been through. It was scary, personally, for me. Because it's eyes at the end of the day. If I can't see, the doctors start scaring me, right?
Significant life change.
Yeah. And it really changed me personally. I've started living in the moment, like you said. I started doing things which I want to do, like this.
Seeing things you want to see.
Definitely.
You may not be able to see in the future.
So it's like that ticking clock at the back of your mind, right? That you never know when things can switch off, right?
Yeah.
And you have an affirmed confirmation that there's something going to happen, right?
Right.
So, no, it's personally changed me, and I should say your experience kind of opened up my eyes as well, because then, and what you have been doing in the last 2 years, I've been silently observing, though we don't connect that often every day, but I've been silently observing, because I get to hear from you, others get to hear from you, what you're doing. And you coming to India has just motivated me, hey, we need to push forward, right? We need to do things and experience things.
Yeah.
And do it with somebody whom you care about, more importantly, like you said. Share the experience, what you might have as part of your profession. Do it in the personal life. But no, thank you. Thank you for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on this platform. Hopefully,
Welcome.
and let's go and see India more.
All right. Sounds good.
Thanks, Mark.